Pull up a chair, honey, and pour yourself some iced tea. We need to have a serious talk. Just you and me. I've been on this green earth for 90 years now. I've seen wars, I've seen peace. I've buried a husband, and I've watched my children grow gray hairs of their own. When you get to be my age, people start thinking your mind is going soft. But let me tell you, it's sharper than ever, because I've spent the last few decades just sitting on this porch, watching how the world turns. I've been observing, listening, and paying attention to things that most people are too busy to see. I haven't just been knitting. I've been taking notes on life. And if there is one thing, one absolute truth, that I need to drill into that pretty head of yours, it is this. If you are over 60 years old, do not, under any circumstances, get married again. Now, don't you look at me like that. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about companionship, about having someone to hold hands with at the movies, or someone to drink coffee with in the morning. I am not telling you to be lonely. I am not telling you to lock your door and never let a man inside. I am telling you not to sign that piece of paper. You see, there is a big difference between love and the law. And at our age, you have to be smart enough to know which is which. I've talked to so many people over the years, lawyers, doctors, folks who handle money, and they all say the same thing, even if they whisper it. What I'm about to tell you isn't just my opinion. It is the cold, hard reality that I have seen destroy the golden years of too many good women. You have to understand that marriage at its core isn't about romance. That's what the movies tell you, but the movies lie. Marriage is a contract. It is a binding legal agreement that merges everything you have worked your whole life to build with someone else's mess. When you were 20, merging was fine because neither of you had two nickels to rub together. But now you have a lifetime of assets, habits, and independence. Why on earth would you want to hand over the keys to your life just because you want a dinner date? I remember a saying I heard once, that love doesn't stand up in court, but a contract sure does. You need to keep that in the front of your mind. Let's talk about money first, because that's usually where the trouble starts, even if we don't like to admit it. You have worked hard. Maybe you had a career, or maybe you saved every penny from your late husband's pension. But however you got it, that nest egg is yours. It's your safety net. It's what keeps you from being a burden on your children. But let me tell you a story about a woman I knew. Let's call her Patricia. She was smart, just like you. She met a charming man at the senior center, a fellow named Robert. Robert was nice. He opened doors and he made her laugh. They got married because it was the right thing to do. Well, it turned out Robert had a mountain of debt that he forgot to mention. Medical bills, credit cards, you name it. And do you know what happened? We call it a silent wealth transfer. Suddenly, Patricia's money wasn't just for her cruises and her grandkids anymore. It was being funneled out to pay for Robert's mistakes. She didn't just marry a man, she married his financial history. And when he passed on a few years later, she was left with half of what she had started with, all because she thought a wedding ring was necessary for happiness. I asked her once, "Pat, would you do it again?" And she looked me dead in the eye and said she wished she had just stayed his girlfriend. She lost her financial security because she didn't realize that in the eyes of the law, yours and mine becomes ours the moment you say, "I do." Are you really willing to risk half of everything you own? Are you ready to gamble your security? Because that is exactly what you are doing. And it's not just about the debt he might bring in. It's about the control you lose over your own spending. You've spent the last, 30 or 40 years managing a household? You know how you like to spend your money. Maybe you want to help your granddaughter with her college tuition. Maybe you want to paint the living room pink. When you get married, you suddenly have to ask for permission. You have to consult a partner. I've seen strong, independent women turn into timid mice because they suddenly had to justify their grocery bills to a new husband who thinks he knows better. That isn't a partnership, honey. That's a loss of autonomy. You earn the right to spend your money how you see fit. Don't give that up. Now that we've got the money talk out of the way, let's move on to something even more precious. Your family. I know you love your children. I know you'd do anything for them. But have you stopped to think about what bringing a new husband into the mix actually does to the dynamic of your family? You might think your kids will be happy for you, and maybe they will be at first. They'll smile and toast champagne at the wedding, saying how glad they are that mom isn't lonely anymore. But behind closed doors, that is a whole different story. I have seen it happen time and time again, and the experts, those family psychologists and lawyers I mentioned, they see it every single day. There was a man named William. Well, his story is famous in our circles. He thought he was doing a good thing by remarrying, but instead of expanding his family, he broke it. The same thing happens to women. When you marry a new man, you are legally and emotionally shifting your loyalty. Your children, who have always been your number one priority, suddenly have to compete for your time, your attention, and yes, your resources. It creates a wedge. You might not see it, but they feel it. They see a stranger sitting in their father's chair, driving their father's car, and living in the house they grew up in. It breeds resentment. The source of this friction often comes down to what we discussed earlier, inheritance. You might think, oh, my kids aren't greedy, but it's not about greed. It's about fairness. When you sign that marriage license, you are risking the legacy you built for your own flesh and blood. You are risking disinheriting your children, or at the very least, complicating their future legal standing. I've seen families tear themselves apart in courtrooms because a step-parent felt entitled to assets that were meant for the biological children. Do you really want your son or daughter to have to fight your new husband for the family heirlooms or the house you promised them? It's a tragedy, and it's entirely preventable. As the experts say, this isn't just an opinion. It is a reality of blended families in later life. You risk pushing your children to the emotional sidelines. Is any man worth losing the closeness you have with your kids? And then, honey, we have to talk about the most exhausting reality of all. This is the one nobody likes to bring up at dinner parties. But since I'm 90, I don't have a filter anymore. We need to talk about your health and his health. Specifically, we need to talk about the nurse trap. You see, men and women age differently. I'm not trying to be mean, but statistics don't lie. Women tend to outlive men, and men tend to need care sooner. When a man over 60 is looking for a wife, often, subconsciously or not, he isn't just looking for a lover. He is looking for a nurse. I want you to think about a friend of mine. Let's call him Charles. Though in this case, the lesson applies perfectly to you. Charles got married late in life looking for companionship, but within a year, his partner fell ill. Instead of enjoying his retirement traveling and sipping wine, he became a full-time caregiver. He was changing bedpans, managing medications, and driving to doctor's appointments every single day. Now, as a woman, you are even more likely to fall into this role. Society expects it of us. We are the nurturers. If you marry a man of 70 and he has a stroke 6 months later, guess who is doing the heavy lifting? You are. You have already raised your babies. Maybe you even cared for your parents or your first husband through their final days. You have done your duty. You have served your time as a caretaker. Do you really want to sign a contract that obligates you to do it all over again? You might think, but I love him. I'd want to take care of him. That is noble, dear, but doing it as a girlfriend is a choice. Doing it as a wife is a legal and moral obligation that can drain your own health. The stress of caregiving in your senior years can send you to an early grave. I've seen vibrant women wither away because they took on the burden of a sick husband just when they should have been focusing on their own well-being. The experts call this the caregiver burden, and it destroys the peace and autonomy you have waited your whole life to enjoy. You finally have the freedom to wake up when you want, eat what you want, and go where you want. Why trade that late life autonomy, which is the most valuable thing you own right now, for a life of servitude? You deserve to be selfish with your time. You deserve to focus on your own health, not managing someone else's decline. Finally, and this might be the most important thing I have to say to you, we need to talk about your freedom. The experts call it late life autonomy, but I just call it doing whatever the heck you want. Think about your life up until now. You were a daughter, obeying your parents. Then you were a wife, compromising with a husband. Then you were a mother, putting your children's needs before your own. You have spent decades answering to other people. Now, for the first time in your life, you are the captain of your own ship. Why would you voluntarily hand over the wheel to someone else? I want to tell you about a woman named Helen. She was a friend of mine, vibrant and full of life. She loved her book clubs, her gardening, and her spontaneous trips to the coast. She met a man who seemed perfect, and they got married because they didn't want to live in sin. Well, within months, Helen's light started to dim. It wasn't that he was a bad man. It was just that he was a man set in his ways. He wanted dinner at 5 p.m. sharp. He didn't like her friends coming over too late. He wanted to watch the news when she wanted to watch her shows. Slowly but surely, Helen's life shrank to fit inside his. She lost her independence, not because he was cruel, but because marriage is a merger. And in a merger, you lose your individuality. As one expert I read put it, you risk losing your autonomy to a relationship that becomes more about control than companionship. You might think you are gaining a partner, but you often end up with a roommate who questions your decisions. Do you really want to explain why you're going out for lunch or why you bought that new dress? You have earned the right to silence. You have earned the right to messy hair in the morning and eating cereal for dinner if you feel like it. Marriage ends that. It brings compromise back into a life that should be celebrating total freedom. Now I can hear you sighing. You're saying, but Grandma, I don't want to be alone forever. I want love. And this is where you need to listen closely, because I am going to give you the secret that these lawyers and psychologists are whispering about. You can have the man. You can have the dinner dates. You can have the romance. You just do not need the license. There is a concept called a companionship agreement, or what some folks call living apart together. It is the best of both worlds. You keep your house. He keeps his. You keep your bank account. He keeps his. You see each other when you want to, and this is the best part. You can send him home when he starts getting on your nerves. You get all the emotional benefits of having a partner without the legal and financial risks that come with a marriage certificate. As the saying goes, love doesn't stand up in court, but a contract does. So don't sign the contract. Keep the love pure. Keep it about the heart, not the law. If things go south, if he becomes abusive, or if he just becomes a grumpy old man that you don't enjoy anymore, you can just walk away. No divorce lawyers, no splitting of assets, no fighting over who gets the toaster. You maintain your power. You maintain your dignity. So, here is the bottom line from an old woman who has seen it all. You have worked too hard to build your nest egg to let a silent wealth transfer drain it away. You love your children too much to risk their inheritance and their emotional peace. You value your health too much to become an unpaid nurse for someone else. And you surely value your freedom too much to start answering to a husband again. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. And let me tell you, being miserable in a marriage is 1,000 times worse than being alone in a peaceful house. If you are standing on the precipice, thinking about walking down that aisle again, I want you to stop. Take a step back. Look at your life, your beautiful, independent, quiet life. Don't ruin it with a signature. If you have a man, love him, enjoy him, but for heaven's sake, keep your name, keep your house, and keep your freedom. That is the only way to truly enjoy these golden years. Now drink your tea before the ice melts. We're done here.